Hello, guys. That solo goes on for a long time, so I didn't want to bury you guys in that 3 minute guitar solo. Not today. How we doing? Yeah, solo, like a guitar solo, like he's playing the guitar on his own as a piece of a part of that music where it's just him playing solo. Call that a guitar solo. Oh, it was a song. I was playing Bury My Bones by Whiskey Myers. A little country vibe recently. You guys know it. But how we doing? Can you guys see the screen? Can I get a quick confirmation? Face reveal? Always. Always. Awesome. Alright, well, you know what, guys? We'll get straight into it, right? Our objective was met on Thursday, yesterday, and we had SMT at this level, right? Which is this low right here, which is this low on NASDAQ. So what does that tell you? Well, it's Friday. A lot of retracements occur on Friday. Even more when Thursday reaches your objective. Now, this is not something I can codify because my objective is not always the same and it's not always for the same reason, right? I can code it into something, but it's very hard to get some statistics. But what we know is that when Thursday expand, Friday has a very high probability of retracing inside the current weekly range. If we look right here and we get ICT has 20 to 30% levels, I like to just use quarters in general. And let me reverse that so it's a little cleaner. So in this case, I was expecting a retracement at least to 25%, right? So to close out the weekly candle, if you visualize the weekly candle, we opened here. Oh, that's not what I was trying to do. Went up to form a high here, expanded to a low here, and then retraced to a close here. That is your week. And so on a Friday, very easy to anticipate a retracement into the range, especially after your objective is met, and moreover, when you have higher time frame SMT. So this is like perfect conditions for me to look for Friday to be a trending day in the opposite direction. Now I did take a long and a short today, so we'll look at both and all the setups, of course, that were provided. But personally, I would have been looking for longs first. Let's open up our Friday. As we know, our objective was met yesterday, right? So no need to keep that on our chart. Looking at it from a 15-minute time frame, what do we always look for? Well, we look for AMD. So clearly, we have some consolidation here. Do we have a clear manipulation at that time? Yeah, right at 9:30, we had a very aggressive move. Now, news side of things, we had 8:30 news, and I wasn't looking at, there was 9:45, I believe it was Chicago PMI. That is not a high impact news for me. So I was starting to trade at 9:30. President Trump was speaking around noon, but whenever that happens, whether it's an FOMC member that's speaking or just any person of interest, right? Any person of power in any sort of way, I just trade before it because it's always during lunch, by the way. Why? Because that's where it's the time off, right? The traders on Wall Street take their lunch. That's why we call it New York lunch. So I always trade the AM session before it, make sure that I'm out of the trade before lunch, which means before noon, and then look for PM opportunities as well. Personally, on a Friday, I'm not really interested in any PM trades. Of course, today that was probably the cleanest move. We'll talk about it. But personally, I was looking to long early in the morning, and then once our 25% objective has been met, and let me actually bring that guy back, you can look for shorts. Let's bring this back so that once we go to a lower time frame chart, we can see it. Okay. Looking back down to a 1 minute chart, we have our 9:30 open right here. Very clear Judah swing lower. And as we said, we already had SMT at the lows. Our higher time frame objective is met. No session manipulation gave more importance to the New York Open Judas. What do you mean by this? No session manipulation. What do you mean by this, Justin? As for me, I see 9:30 open. We ran down aggressively. This is my Judas swing. From this point on, I'm looking long. Everything aligns for me to look for long here. seeing you type. Okay. Yes, but the fact that London didn't manipulate gave more importance at looking at New York Open Judah swing. Oh, yes. And yes, definitely. Right? Since all we've done currently in the day is consolidate, I'm going to expect my manipulation to come at 9:30. So yes, right? 100%. I just didn't get your point. Sorry for that. So once on 9:30 we got our manipulation, you can trust this as a low of day. Now, of course, if we look at ES, this wasn't the low of day, but we formed that with SMT later down the line, so it is still valid. Looking at this, what do I need for a setup? I need a breaker block. First breaker block to form during the New York session, and no, I don't give more importance. It's just I'm looking for a long as soon as we start going down here. So I'm looking for long. All I'm waiting for is for a breaker block to form. And that is the first breaker block that there was to form. Now, in this case, we did not inverse this fair value gap. So our entry would have been on this inverse fair value gap right here. That is the first time we retraced into an inverse fair value gap or fair value gap overlapping with my breaker block. And if we look right here, what would be your 3 PD array stop loss rule? Well, inverse fair value gap, and then you have the inverse fair value gap below here, which places your stop there. Now that is quite a wide stop. And my first objective is always going to be current daily high. So even though I anticipate that price will go all the way up here, my first target is, you know what, let's draw it up actually, is current daily high. Now in this case, price did not offer enough risk to reward at current daily high. I need that to be at least 1.7, 1.75. So what do? Well, my students know I don't take the trade unless it gives me a better entry. So my stop loss is not going to change. And you got stopped out? Well, see, you know that, Justin. Oh, and I see that made more sense. I changed you guys' sides, so I need to get used to looking at it a tiny bit more. I didn't see that breaker. Would the one around 9:40, 10 a.m. have been a good idea? We'll get there. But first of all, in this entry, when it doesn't provide me enough risk to reward, and let's mark this as current day high. What do? Well, I can't take the trade. I know that. So what am I going to do? Well, I am going to wait for it to give me a better entry unto a point where I can take the trade. And let's be pessimistic here. Let's say 1.7. The only thing that's not going to change is my stop loss. So my stop loss is still going to be at the same spot, just like I entered here, because my 3 PD arrays are my invalidation point. So in this case, I would just wait and see if it retraces deeper inside this inverse fair value gap, our entry level, I'm going to have a trade. And if not, I'm not going to have a trade. And why did that not save? There we go. Much cleaner. So if it retraces deeper, I'm going to have a trade like we can see here. And I hit the button as soon as I see 1.7. For me, that's my target. If it's below 1.7, it's not even worth it for me to take the trade, even if it pushes higher, because those trades that are losses are not good trades because it didn't even offer enough return on my trade. But in this case, even with a 70-point stop loss, the markets are very volatile. So I can look for a long. And see, in this case, you would have reached current daily high. Then I go break even. And then, as you can tell, clearly we went higher. I'm going to mark out our standard deviations. I personally just held and took profits along the way. Whenever I see a swing point, so very nice standard deviations, but whenever I see a swing point formed after taking out an objective and then a deep retracement, at this point on, my idea, well, it honestly doesn't matter what you think at this point. The important part is that once we break back above this range, my stop loss goes here. Why is that? Because we have taken an objective, formed a retracement, and now we have a continuation. So focusing on the market symmetry, I don't want this low broken. Very simple. So for me, I just took profits here once we broke that, had my stop loss here. Same thing occurred here. We had a deep retracement, then we had a continuation. So now my stop loss is going to be at this low. And when I saw that we induced this high on NASDAQ, sorry, but we took it out on ES, that's SMT, that was my full closure. So I full closed about at this area for a very nice return on this trade. So we'll talk about it. But if you missed that entry, right? Wolfe was asking here a second ago, you were asking for 9:40, 10 a.m. The breaker blocks that are formed here. Yes, very good entry still, right? If you look at this, you have another breaker block that formed right here. Right? I'm looking to make sure that I am only taking the most recent. Let's actually remove the text on this one so that we can see something. So right here, we have another breaker block that formed. And let's remove the 10 a.m. open here so I can see something. Right after we formed it, at this level, you had your first entry. I need to get a little quicker with drawing, and I need to clean up these way too many templates there. Looking at this market structure shift, you have your first fair value gap right here, which gives you a very nice entry. But in this case, would you have gone and stopped out? 1, 2, 3 PD array stop loss rule. So I need my stop all the way down here for this inverse fair value gap. So yeah, pretty decent in this case. Once again, a wide stop, but still, it did not offer enough risk to reward to my objectives. So same thing as, I believe it was, I don't know if Andrew is in here right now. I don't think he is. Yeah, he's not, but he did talk about it to me today, and he sent me the trade that he took, right? And he told me that he took the lower entry, and before me even asking, he said, yeah, I took the lower entry because it did not offer enough risk to reward. Yeah, you saw that, Wolf, in the private chat? Well, exactly. So in this case, it's the same exact reasoning for the one I just explained previously. This doesn't offer me enough risk to reward, so I need to wait. Still doesn't offer enough. Oh, and now all of a sudden it does. So for me, the entry is as soon as that offers 1.7, that's pessimistic, but he waited for the other fair value gap here, which in general, I would not recommend. Just take the entry that is present. Now my trade is still valid if we invalidate this. My stop is not going to change because my stop is based on that PD array first as well. So the stop loss doesn't change, but you can wait for a better entry. And see, in this case, you would have had 1.7 at your first target, and the risk to reward is going to be the same as the other one, since, as you can see, oh, well, actually, no. Why is that? Oh, yeah, of course, stop loss is a little bit smaller. I thought we were still at 70, but no, because we have a better entry. So this was actually a better return on the trade. But for me, first entry, I'm not cherry picking. That was a good entry. If you waited after 9:45, because we had 9:45 news, as I said, well, this would have still been a very great entry. Deep retracements like this one aren't very common with winner. That is true. So usually you don't have that big of a retracement, but you need to have a specific set of rules to be able to interact with it when that happens. More often than not, if a trade doesn't provide you with enough return, you're just not going to have a trade. That's the truth. And you know what? I prefer missing moves than taking part in moves that don't have enough upside for me. That is how simple we can put it. Also, there's a bunch of SMT here. We can just look at the most recent one just before our entry. We have, where is it? So it was just after our entry, actually. No, not even. Why did I see a bunch of SMT? I might have been on a lower time frame chart this morning. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. But no, there's no clear SMT on those lows. So bullshit. Sorry about that. But once again, looking at this trade, the 5-second chart, 15 second. But after this trade, what can I look for? Well, of course, you can look for a lot more things. Like, for example, once again, we know it's a retracement, right? It's a day when we're going to retrace into the weekly range. But does that mean that we won't have any intraday moves? What does intraday mean? During the day, right? Intraday moves that are going to retrace lower. Well, not at all. And of course, now with Trump, with hindsight, we went a lot lower. We actually broke the range with SMT, right? But it would be fair to look for reversals at this point, especially after we got that SMT. Like I said, this is where I close my long, because this now becomes a short setup. And if we look at this, we have a very, very clean short setup. I'll actually showcase it right here. Well, actually, look clean. I think it is. But right after this SMT is here, I can now look for short-term reversals, right? So intraday reversals, looking for a retracement lower. So if you were bearish, of course, that's what you would have been looking for at this point anyways. And we have this inversion fair value gap with the volume imbalance here that gives you a perfect entry. I'm going to try and find one, see if there was one that was a little easier to spot. But for me, that is the only good entry, right? It is the correct entry. So there's no other entries. And at this point in time, as you guys can tell, very beautiful, but this looks like the only entry that was available. As soon as we close below it, well, actually, this wasn't a breaker yet. So it formed a breaker on, well, this bar, as I always say, because once you form these equal lows right here, then I can trust it that it's a breaker. So your entry would actually be here. A little bit of a harder one to spot, right? Well, not to spot, but to execute on, especially after we saw this fair value gap just get traded through and then through again. You just frame this as consolidation at this point. But it was a clear entry. It was following the rule set, and with the 3 PD array stop loss rule, was a very good return on the trade, right? Definitely look to partial early on a trade like this. So I have that 2 to 2.5 aligning beautifully with this level right here. That is a great opportunity to partial. I don't know why. I feel like my resolution on TradingView is bad right now. The quality of these lines. I'm going to need to check up on that. But a very clear and very quick also target right here. And now, what would be your full target? Well, just looking at standard deviations with midnight open, that is a great objective. But mechanically speaking, we're looking for an intraday retracement. 15-minute chart, you don't have a clear discount and efficiency with that order block. I would always go to the 5-minute in cases like this, just because the range is not large enough. But if you use a 15-minute, you would have still reached your objective. But if you used the 5-minute, you would have been a little more precise, I believe. Well, actually, no, you just didn't reach it. So really, that 4 standard deviations with midnight open would have been perfect, textbook, but it just did not get there. So you would have had your partial here and then stop loss break even, right? Yeah, it hit your stop loss before reaching that final target, which honestly for me, I see midnight opening price. I know the statistics tell me that this is going to be hit more likely than not, and we are going to gravitate back and forth from it. With that 4 standard deviations giving me additional confluence, I would definitely be targeting that. Just did not reach it today. Definitely a very nice short, even just to that partial with 3R. That is very straightforward stuff. Now, am I going to talk about how you could have longed or shorted here? No, because as I always say, I stop before 11:30 in the AM session, and moreover, actually, we had Trump speaking just a little bit before. So for me, I would not have looked for more opportunities until the PM session, and Friday PM session is not something I like to trade, especially when I'm up for the day. I am done at this point in time. We are going to talk about it because you actually had a very nice setup, right? If you look at the PM session, we're always looking for a lunch trade first. So you have lunch high right here, which would be your target because you have a beautiful lunch trade. Did your retracement objective get met? Well, I can definitely tell we have, because look how deep we traded into this range. But let's look at it. In this case, look into a 5-minute chart. It would have been this 5-minute order block right here. That's your first inefficiency in discount. Did it get reached during lunch? Yes. Okay, I can look at the noon to 1 range. Yeah, definitely just Friday PM session overall. Wolfe is not always the best. I personally don't like trading it because it's super aggressive, but it does offer a lot of volatility. And as we know, for us, volatility means opportunity. So in this case, if we use until the 1 PM range, we have our lunch trade right here. We wait for 1:30, and after 1:30, we can look to take a unicorn entry. Now in this case, you would not have had one. Why is that? Well, I don't see a retracement into a fair value gap unless here, which is too far from my breaker block that is present here. This fair value gap is too far. If I look at inverse fair value gaps, I have this. Oh, well, actually, we did tag it. So never mind, you did have an entry. I just did not see us tag it. So let's look at it right here. This is in close proximity to my breaker block. I can look for that. And as you can see right here at 1:30, you would have had your entry. I can definitely tell that it did not go well, but it doesn't matter. Your stop would be here actually. So, oh wow, you would have been fine. Why is my stop loss here? 1 PD array, 2 PD array, 3 PD array. Allow for the invalidation of all 3. gives you a very nice, well, very big stop loss as always, right? But very nice return. And you would have actually been up 1.7 here. Let's look at where our target would be, because of course our target in this case is lunch high. And after that, relative equal highs at current daily high, that is a great objective as well. And as I said, the quarters that we have here. So we have a lot of objectives. But first, I'm going to refer to the range that we are reversing, right? So lunch raid, lunch range, and my partial objective would be right here. Right, 5-minute chart, first premium inefficiency, that has to be my partial. In this case, I don't think it offered enough risk to reward. Yeah. So once again, would have looked for a better entry. That entry actually came, but did it come all the way? This is the lowest point, 1.36. So no. Truth is, you didn't have a really good entry here. And once again, as I said about this morning, well, you would have waited. Right? Because this one, compared to the first morning trade where we looked at, this one didn't offer you enough risk to reward before leaving. So that's just a missed trade, actually. If you want to be trading those, you can. But personally, as I said, this is not something I'm interested in. Now, after we reach this level, retrace lower, and another setup form. Is that setup still valid? Well, two ideas. Lunch raid, which is still valid, and also 2 p.m. open. That's what I wait for as well. And if I bring that up on ES, I want to see SMT. So let's look if we have that. So no, 2 p.m. open in the same way. So no SMT at this low makes it a little worse of a setup. But if everything else aligns, if I have my breaker block, and actually there is a breaker block just before that. So let's mark out the most recent one. In this case, we have a breaker block. Once we break above it, you're looking for an entry. This is no longer an inverse fair value gap. No fair value gap here. You have this inverse fair value gap, which we just traded back into. Wow, that is absolutely precise. So you traded back into here. This is the bar that formed your, actually, no, the bar just before formed your breaker. So you'd be entered on this bar, and this is your breakers and validation point. So this is my stop loss. Even though I don't have 3 PD arrays, there's only 2, right? The order block and the fair value gap. I can't put it lower because that's my breakers and validation point. Breaker formed SMT2. I didn't really look, but yes, right here we have SMT just after the open. I was looking for SMT specifically here, but we did not. But all of this went lower, while ES went higher. SMT at this level, very tight stop loss on this one. And as you guys can tell, where would be my partial here? My objective is the same. Now my partial is going to be the high of my most recent leg. This is obvious for some and more complicated for others. If this is too hard for you to see that, look, these are relative equal highs, kinda, right? They're kind of far apart, but we induced this level. This is an area of old consolidation. For me, I just spot it right away. That's the truth. But if that's hard for you, then how can you find a high probability partial? Well, let's look at standard deviations. Now, I'm going to use the one of the large range because I like it. And I'm going to use the one of the range from the breaker that you would have traded. So in this case, they both tell you the same thing. This is a great area to partial with a cluster of standard deviations. And if you're scared and more, well, not even about being scared, you're up a lot of money at this point. All you want to do is go break even and take some partials. So right here, you have a cluster with the reversal range in 1, with a fair value gap being present at this level. Great area to partial, you're up money. Partial here. But if I'm partialing early, I'm not going to partial 50%, for example. Or I'll do 50% here and then 25% here. And at this point, half of what's left and then leave a runner, right? Going into Friday's PM session, I'm probably just going to partial, fully close. And as you can see with the return that that trade offered, you wouldn't have had to think about it. These PM trades, sometimes they offer a lot, but consistency is a lot lower on that PM session. Still, lots of opportunity. And am I going to discuss shorts? No, because with me, the only things I trade are lunch raid and 2 p.m. power of 3 in the PM. And lunch raid told me, you need to go long to here. So I'm not going to target anything else because that's what my trade tells me to target. So you can see, very nice Friday to close off the month, right? And I did want to slide in a little reminder. I am going to post an announcement about it, but this weekend's weekly outlook will also be our monthly statistical outlook. I want to start this, and that every first outlook of a new month, so we're going into March, we're going to do an outlook. I'm going to share data. I'm going to share statistics. I want to give you guys more value always, right? So I did want to give a little shout out to that. We're going to have that on Sunday, 5 p.m. EST. As always, you can always refer to the events in the Discord if you want to know more. Do we have any questions about this day, right? And just because of that, as I said, I'm not going to consider any further trades. Glad to see a few new faces in here, right? So when we have a lot of PA reviews, I want to do one earlier on one of the days so that we give the opportunity for more so the European people, but also people that don't want to be on their charts at 8:30 p.m. For me, it's always better to do my reviews the furthest apart from my trading so that I can look at it from an outside perspective of, okay, well, here's what I should have seen today. Now, what did I trade? I personally traded this and this. So I know that today I performed as I should have. But on some days, I review it and I'm like, I see a trade that I just didn't see when I was live. And then that goes into my journal and I wonder why that happened and how can I prevent that? Absolute fire as always. Appreciate that, Wolfie. Appreciate that, definitely. Well, I'm going to leave you guys to it then. Yeah, you too, Justin. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your time off as always. And hopefully we'll see each other on Sunday for our monthly outlook. You guys have a great time. Take some time off this weekend. We need it as traders. Bye, guys. Have a great night. Always a pleasure.